Good morning. It is Monday, the 29th of January 2029, and it's coming up to 4 years since we left the European Union. 3 years since we really left the European Union, because for a year after leaving, we had to follow all the rules, even though we had no say in the rules. Now, the big news this week is that they're finally bringing in the border checks that they should have brought in a long time ago. This is part of our deal with the WTO. Do you remember? Do you remember? Let's go WTO. Do you remember all that? That was fun, wasn't it? Well, yeah. That's coming back now, because part of the idea with the WTO is that you can't give favoritism to a trading bloc or individual country if you don't have a bespoke trade deal that specifically says that you are allowed to do X, Y, Z, because otherwise it is unfair on all the other countries. It's got the most favoured nation clause. And for the last few years, we've been kicking the can down the road where it comes to actual phytosanitary checks on stuff coming in from the EU, and just checks in general, because EU standards are pretty high. So anything coming in from the EU is going to be of high enough standard to come into the UK. There's really no reason to check it, except because this is what the Brexiteers want. And as a result of it, you are going to be paying one hell of a tax. You think VAT is bad? Wait for the sovereignty tax to be put on top of that. Don't forget, we import the majority of our food. We import the majority of our electronic goods. We import the majority of a lot of things we use every day in our everyday lives. Because, shock, horror, did you know that we don't have any blast furnaces left in the UK now? So we can't make our own steel from scratch. We can maybe recycle it. That's what we've already got. We can't make any from scratch. We have no gold. It was taken by the Romans. We don't have any coal that's particularly easy to get to, and on that we really want to get to, because it's really, really tragically bad for the environment. The coal mine that's opened in Cumbria notwithstanding. So what have we got? Not a lot, actually. And even in the few trade deals we have out there, that with the handful of countries that are not part of the EU that we might be able to get a good deal with, most of them are just throwing up their hands and saying we can't be bothered with this. The India trade deal, I don't know even that's moving at the moment. We know there's going to be no movement until after the Indian elections, the presidential elections in India, the biggest one-day demonstration of democracy on the planet, but it looks like Modi is going to win again. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think we're going to be having a spring election, I think, because I genuinely believe that Sunak wants to hang on till that trade deal, at least an interim agreement, is entered into, because that will raise his share portfolio with Emphasis, which is the company that him and his wife own £700 million worth of shares in. And if those shares go up by, I don't know, 50%, he's going to be a billionaire by the time he leaves office. And we don't need to have the trade deal done. We just need to have that memorandum of understanding or whatever towards a trade deal, because that will boost the shares. Because obviously Emphasis, the second biggest IT company in India, will be like, oh, great, we'll be able to access the British market in an easier way. So you've got all these things coming together kind of all at the same time. We've got Canada backheeling the deal that we were going to get with them to try and bring up the deal that we got after we left the EU to be as good as the one that we had when we were in the EU. And that's collapsed. Kemi Badenoch announced this week that it was Kemi Badenoch that they wanted to put a 245% tariff on cheese, so they walked away, because you know what the Tories are like with their cheese, especially Kemi Badenoch and that horrible Liz Truss woman. Kemi Badenoch, one of the worst in the Tory party, one of the worst Tories by a mile, which is saying something. They're all pretty bloody awful, but she's the one who accused the National Trust of trying to rewrite history by telling people what happened in history instead of sugarcoating it for the slow kids at the back. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like someone watching Schindler's List and going, oh, they're sugarcoating history. They should sugarcoat it. They should make it nicer. There should be tickle farms. There shouldn't be extermination camps. You're like, what? Why? Because it's important that we don't upset people now about the things that people did in the past. Think about the Germans watching that, thinking, "Oh my God, my grandfather could have been a guard in one of these concentration camps." Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want people to feel bad, would you? I don't really care. I mean, it's something happened in the past. It's not their direct fault, but I think the least we can do is be aware of what happened in the past. And when people ask how did they get the money for their stately home? Surely that should be something that the National Trust can answer that question honestly. Yeah. Anyway, these are the clowns that we've had in power for the last 14 years. Even though they like to pretend they've only been in power for a year or so, because that's the way they roll. Right. So is anyone having a good time with Brexit? Apart from the Russians, obviously, apart from Vladimir Putin, who is probably cock-a-loop at the way all things are going. Let's have a look at this opinion poll. This is from last month. So this is from the 13th to 15th of December. Good impact or bad impact? In general, we're looking at the UK. We've got a bad impact there of nearly 50% of people responding, saying it's had a bad impact. The ability for the UK companies to import goods outside the EU, that's not even good. That's like nothing to do with the EU. Do you know what I mean? That's literally the ability to sell stuff outside of the EU. It shouldn't like be a thing. The environment. I mean, the fact that you've got about 12% there thinking it's a good thing for the environment. I mean, you've got to wonder just how below average the below average people are who think that. Because it's a joke, isn't it? Like 50% of any given population are below average, and then 50% of them are below average of the below average people. So that's 25% are just like doubly below average. 12.5% of below average of below average of below average in their abilities. And funnily enough, the people who think that Brexit is good for the environment is about 12.5%. Salaries and wages. Obviously, no one thinks that's a good idea. Your personal financial situation. I think this is interesting. So it's currently on about 38% for people saying it's a bad thing for salaries and wages. I think that's going to go up in terms of people thinking it's a bad thing, as is your personal financial situation, because what's going to happen over this next year as we bring in these checks. So first of all, we're going to have on the 31st of January, they're going to bring in these new declarations that you have to declare when you're bringing stuff from the EU into the UK. We've been ignoring them for the last 3 years, and we can't ignore them anymore. So now we have to basically do them. But we're not doing them straight away. So what's going to happen on the 31st of January is nothing really. It's going to be on an honor system. So it's going to be like, is all your stuff, up to scratch? And they'll be like, yeah, okay. So that's not going to be too much of a jaunt, I don't think, jolt to the system, sorry. There's going to be 3 months, a grace period of 3 months where they're going to ask for your papers, but I don't think they're going to care too much if the papers aren't there. Or maybe you have to have your papers in order, but that the goods aren't actually going to be inspected because we don't have the inspectors to do it. Apparently, in 3 months' time, then we're going to start inspecting stuff. And by the end of the year, we're going to not just be inspecting stuff that comes in, but also food and drink that's going to be coming into the UK. And what's going to happen is lots of EU importers from the EU importing into the UK, exporting to the UK, they are going to either jack their prices up, the sovereignty tax, or they're going to just stop selling stuff to the UK. You are going to see this. You are going to see this by the end of the year. This all goes ahead. What you're going to see is your food and drink budget, your groceries for the week is going to increase. It's going to cost a lot more to actually be able to buy what you always buy, and there's going to be less choice. That's going to be a big thing. You're going to have a selection of 5 different vegetables. That's it. Hope you like carrots. Anyway, so yeah, well, that's the situation. That's probably going to happen. Now, there is a way out of this, which I'll come to in a moment. Let's go through this again. The ability for the UK to control immigration. That's probably the funniest one. We've left the EU, and over 50% of people responded saying that the ability of the UK to control immigration hasn't improved by us leaving the EU. Breaking Point. Do you remember the Breaking Point poster, the racist Breaking Point poster? Yeah. The NHS, is that going to improve? Less than 10%, 8% of people who responded thought that's still going to improve. And then prices in the shops. This is the big one. and this is going to get even worse now. So have prices in the shops improved? 7% there saying yes, they have. 7% who are probably privately educated. And then over 60% saying no, they most definitely haven't, because they most definitely haven't. I think that figure's going to go up as well. Up and up, I should imagine. Anyway, so that's the situation on the ground. What can we do about it? Thank you very much to Brian Ferguson for the super chat. Anne Widdecombe still loves Brexit. She does indeed. I'm just going to do something here, because I realised that I now have a fancy new graphic. When someone gives a super chat, I can go, super chat! There you go. Is that a bit too fancy for this time of the morning? It's a bit big breakfast, isn't it? Oh, Anne Widdecombe still looks back. Thank you very much to Brian there. And also Lefty Boater, thank you very much. Super chats 8 open, folks. Thank you very much, Joe, Lefty Boater. And I'll give you another super chat if anyone wants to throw it in and get a little animation. I need to have a little bit of music that goes with that, I think. Like a... like you started Windows 95. Anyway, what can we do about this? I'll come to your comments and then we'll do the roundup of the day's papers. Labour can quite simply align our... Very, very simply, and they haven't ruled this out, they can align our regulations with that of the EU. That's it. That's all we need to do right now. That will make us a rule taker and rather than a rule maker, but so what? It will make people's groceries cheaper. We have a situation now where over 1 million people are using food banks. People are struggling to pay the rent. People are struggling to just keep their head above water. Homelessness is through the roof. People are generally more unhappy than they were 10 years ago. Everything that could be going wrong is going wrong in terms of our economy. The most sensible way out of this is regulatory alignment with the EU, because then you don't have to have checks coming in. You just say it's fine because we believe that the EU has the highest standards in the world and anything coming from there is okay with us. And you put that into the trade treaty and Bob's your uncle. You don't need to have any of these expensive checks. And don't forget, this isn't just an expense for the UK. This is an expense for European companies that want to sell stuff in the UK. And they're going to have to make this decision of whether they jack the prices up, which they probably will do. But if they're not going to jack the prices up, they'll just stop exporting to the UK. They will do. But why would you? You're going to be making it, your profit margin was, before Brexit, it was maybe 10, 11%. And now it's going to go down to what, 1 or 2%. Are you going to keep selling it to the UK? No, you're not. That'd be daft. And so you're going to see things like cheeses and wine and all the stuff, all the vegetables throughout the winter that we buy from the EU. You're going to see the prices of them go up, because it's more faff for the people who are having to sell it to us. It's less faff for them to sell it to the other 450 million people of the European Union who have regulatory alignment, because they're all part of the single market. Regulatory alignment is going to be one of the first steps, along with, we've already re-entered Horizon. Erasmus will be the next one, I think, under Labour, re-entering the Erasmus scheme. And then, we're going to have regulatory alignment pretty quickly. I can see people really kicking off about this. And it's interesting, the timetable that they're sort of like, well, we'll leave the ones that's going to jack up the prices for food and drink. We'll leave that till towards the end of the year. But my question to you right now is, I want to know, Brian pointed out that Anne Widdecombe still loves Brexit, but do you know anyone in your life who still thinks Brexit's a good idea, who's like, oh, everything's more expensive and the economy's still in the shit and we haven't done anything about controlling immigration and all the things we were promised turn out to be utter bullshit? Is there anyone who still believes that who's still a true Brexit believer? And I know we're in a biased crowd here on Labour Social. There's a lot of us who are, former Remainers. We're now rejoiners. And we're a bit skewed. And I guess our group of family, friends would be like that as well. But I know people who voted for Brexit. And they don't want to talk about it anymore. So what's your experience been like? I'm just going to jump into the chat. Audrey says, what? We've also got Tommy saying, I'm waiting for someone to tell me that our economy is growing so I can tell them our economy has grown since 2010. I like it when Graham said that. No, our economy's not grown since 2007. What was the economy? This is what I want them to ask when they get the IEA or one of these Tottenham Street think tank clowns on the news on on these politics shows. What was the economy? How big was the economy in 2007? It was $3 trillion. What was it in 2021? It was $3 trillion. Do you see what the problem? Can you see the? Neil says, Brexit, is anyone happy about it? We have to get a question like that on the next general election ballot. Yeah, fair enough. Lol, if you don't have epilepsy yet, make a super chat and you will soon. The animation is Japanese cartoon trippy. Really off your foot? Oh, God, I don't want to give anyone epilepsy. An epileptic fit. Please don't have music for super chats. Some of the channels do, but it spoils the flow and gets annoying. Okay. Alignment, will that result in fewer super chats? Alignment without actually being in the single market that equals the restrictions without the key benefits. Yes, it's a step back into the EU, mate. That's the idea. We're gonna have to. It is inevitable that we will rejoin the EU. It's gonna happen, and people say, "Oh, it's gonna happen in the next 50 years." It will. It will, because if we hadn't seen such riches, we could live with being poor. Quite literally. And young people absolutely hate Brexit because it's curtailed their horizons. It really has. Like, young people used to have the freedom to just live and work all around Europe. You know, I used to have that freedom with my British passport. I can't do it anymore. That's been taken from our children. Their birthright was taken by public school wankers like Nigel Farage and Michael Gove and Aaron Banks and Boris Johnson and Patrick Minford and all these clustering. Oh, I don't want to say. It's too early to drop the C-bomb, but these people aren't good people. If there was a heaven, they're not going to it. They're going to the Bernie place. Nick in Diff says, sadly I do, Graham. I argue with my Brexit mate whenever I see him. He's not happy, but he thinks we haven't Brexited enough. He's delusional and also a Trump supporter. He likes war. He likes war. He likes, big supporter of Putin, probably. It's funny that, like, a lot of Trump supporters also support Putin because they're like, I need a strong man, which is like the most beta thing ever. Like, I mean, seriously, these are the people who go, oh, you snowflake. And you're like, oh, really? Okay. What do you want in life? I want a strong man to tell me what to do. Oh, really? Okay, that seems very alpha. But I go to the gym, so... Okay, all right, mate. Steve's Retro Loft says, sit down. Ned Gibbons says, sit down, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I am sitting down. I'm a bit confused. Sorry, why is everyone telling me to sit down? Okay. Bit confused now. My dad's mates voted for Brexit and they're not happy. He doesn't rub it in their faces but causes some awkward silences. Emma, thank you very much for the super chat. Emma says, my friend was a Tory voter, voted for Brexit and is so angry now. She feels duped and conned, but she is doing something about it. She's just done a campaign video for our Labour candidate. Oh, Emma, that's brilliant news. Thanks very much for the £10 super chat. Really appreciate that. Tinkinator says, my dad still thinks Brexit was for the greater good. He insists the EU will collapse any day now. I was thinking about this. This morning before we started. I was like, I've got the website as the EU collapsed yet.com. You type it in as the EU collapsed yet.com. It's a little bit no. None. Sorry, none. David Faulkner, thank you very much. But yeah, the EU is going to collapse. Thanks very much for the super chat, David Faulkner there. Join EFTA or EEA ASAP. Oh, I like that. I like the use of acronyms. You quoted song Sit Down by James. Oh, right, I did. If you hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. Thank you. Sorry, I just got really confused there. I'm like, people with exclamation mark in capital letters. Sit down. I'm like, but I am sitting. Oh, God. Oh, my God. This is why you always need an animation for your super chats. Because I have another one from Brian. According to the experts, we didn't Brexit enough. That's disturbing, isn't it? Like, this is not hard enough. And I did the video, didn't I, last week about... And I made it, and then afterwards I thought, bloody, I should split that into two. I should have done one about how incredibly stupid Theresa Coffey is. But then the other one should have just been about this idea that we haven't Brexited enough, that there's some magical countries out there that we can do this amazing trade deal with, and then we'll earn loads of money, rather than trading with our immediate neighbours. who are rich. It's like, no, there's this country, there's a poor country on the other side of the planet that we desperately need to trade with. I could live with being poor. Great song by James, indeed. Get with the program, Graham. Lol, says Audrey. Simon says, are you confused? Then join the Conservative Party. Dave says, and the penny has dropped. Come on, Dave. It's early in the morning, mate. Can't do everything. Right, should we go and have a quick look at the papers? And I will dip more into what you're saying there and stuff. Right, so we have, what do we have? We've got lives wrecked by Tories, town hall catch squeeze, vulnerable hit as 40 councils struggle on the brink of bankruptcy. Easy for you to say. Oh my God, Brian, thank you very much for the super chat. I don't have super chats set up on this channel, so I'll have to go here for it. There you go. You got your super chat. You got your super chat animation. It's a novelty. I'm sure it'll wear off soon. But yeah, Brian says, God, I miss the experts. Yeah, like Patrick Minford, the only person they could find, the only economist who thought that Brexit would be a good idea. At least he was honest about winding down British automobile production and steel and, agriculture. Why no mention of farmer protests in France, Germany, and Holland last week still going on? I don't know enough about it. I could find some stuff about it. I'm going to write that down because we will cover it. I'll tell you what, farmers protest. So on Tuesdays at 9 o'clock, me and Ollie Bowler Hatman do a show called Geoscope, in which we talk about what's happening in the world, because this is more of a UK-based thing most of the time, but sometimes we have to look outside the UK bubble, see what else is going on. Oh, Captain Bart Roberts, thank you very much for the super chat. Trade deals on average take 10 years to negotiate. Yeah, we rushed through a bunch of trade deals, most notably with New Zealand and Australia. Like Australia, the trade deal we had with Australia was just absolutely bonkers. It was literally, we're going to have a trade deal in which we allow them to bring 20,000 tons of hormone injected beef into the UK a year. And how much are we allowed to sell them? How much beef are we allowed to sell to Aberdeen Angus beef? How much of that are we allowed to sell to our friends in Australia? None. Not a single brisket. Hurrah. Don't watch Geoscope. It's scary. It is a bit scary. But that's just, that's just my face. Anyway, Daily Telegraph. Iran to blame for US troops, says Biden. This is three American troops in Jordan were killed by a rocket by a militant Islamist group that might have links to Iran. I'm sure we'll be talking about that in Geoscope this week. What else have we got? Ban on disposable vapes. That this is something that has taken way too long to happen, and there's obviously the effect of the tobacco lobby in the UK over Parliament. The tobacco lobby is still insanely strong. Tobacco, the drug that people like to smoke, which gives them lung cancer and heart disease, which is incredibly addictive, and the cigarette companies actually put more chemicals into the cigarettes because to make them more addictive. And it always cracks me up when someone who's very, health conscious about what they eat smokes, and I'm like, how do you okay. But yeah, smoking, the smokers of a dying breed, and now we've got this whole generation coming up with vapes which smell a lot nicer than cigarettes, but are possibly just as deadly for you, just filling up your lungs with chemicals for no reason other than making a massive profit for these evil companies that want to make loads of money. And obviously, smoking is the anti-vaccine. If you think of it this way, like vaccines stop you getting ill. So if you're invested in a health insurance or in health companies and things like that, it's in your interests for people to smoke and not get vaccinated, because it means that they're going to have a massive hospital bill at some point in their life. And someone's going to have to pay it. Probably won't be them because they'll probably be dead. Right, moving on. The Times here, drone strike on US base raises fear of Iran war. Just to go back onto the vaping thing for a moment. Also, it's incredibly bad for the environment. Disposable vapes are so bad for the environment, but so are cigarettes. Got to understand that of all of the weight of plastic in our oceans, the number one is fishing tackle, fishing stuff, lines and nets and things. That's number one by weight of plastic pollution in our ocean. The number two by weight is cigarette butts. Every time a smoker put the cigarette out and threw it in the gutter like they do, or threw it into wherever, it's gone out to the sea because it doesn't get treated. It doesn't go to the sewage plant. The stuff that you get in the drains doesn't go to the sewage plant. It goes pretty much straight out into the ocean as overflow. And so literally billions, trillions, quadrillions of those little dog ends into the sea. And yeah, that's destroying our oceans. So thanks for that, smokers. Drone strike on US raises fear of Iran war. This is the worry that Iran is really pissing everybody off in the region. Obviously, they're supporting Hamas and also Hezbollah, but also they're supporting the Houthis, who are now firing rockets at ships going past the Horn of Africa. And also, you've got the Pakistanis who are pissed off because I think it's the Baluchistan. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. There's a part of Pakistan which is claimed by Iran and Afghanistan, by the way. But yeah, there's been some rockets fired over the last couple of weeks. So Iran is not getting on with any of its neighbors at the moment. And the annoying thing is about this is that Iran was well and truly put in its box by the nuclear agreement agreed by President Obama. This basically said they weren't allowed to enrich uranium to make nuclear bombs. They could only do it to make power, and they'll be inspected and blah, 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 blah. And it was in their interest to do that because it was moving towards a situation in which Iran could more freely trade with the rest of the world, and some of the lifting of sanctions down the road and all that was all promised. It was this, this roadmap, and that was all thrown away by Trump for no reason, because it was working really well. The only reason he got rid of it is because it was invented by President Obama, and he doesn't like Obama because the man is a child. The man is an absolute child. Right, so moving on. Rainer, council funds just a sticking plaster. The councils are going bankrupt left, right, and centre because the Tories have capped how much money they can get. I mean, it's as simple as that. Strike hell on train. Strike hell? As 9 days of walkout start, Mail probe reveal bosses lining their pockets. Oh, that's an interesting turn of phrase for the Mail to use, which supports, unequivocally supports the Tory party and everything they do, including lining their pockets with billions of pounds of taxpayers' cash for PPE that didn't work. There you go. They bought a yacht. Britain's 19.6 degree January heat record, days after shivering an Arctic blast. Balmy. So there you go. Basically, it's the highest temperature ever recorded up in Scotland yesterday or the day before. And then we've got Kemi Badenoch. Staring Tory plotters must stop messing around. This is the Express, another nightmare of a newspaper. Tory plotters have been told to stop messing around by Kemi Badenoch, who insisted that those touting to replace her, touting for her to replace Rishi Sunak are not my friends. Well, I could have told you that because Kemi Badenoch doesn't have friends. She just has, I know, I imagine that she has lots of dead stuffed animals, like taxidermy animals, and they're her friends. And they're all in like hideous, like death poses. And she has them all around the house. I just imagine. I don't know. Never met her. Labour private school tax set to squeeze deprived children at some grammar schools. Work that one out. I guarantee that would be written by someone who has a vested interest in private schools, whether it's because they went to one themselves or their children now go to one. And they're like, I do have to pay VAT. There was someone complaining this weekend about having to pay, that they only earn 60 grand a year and 20 grand of it goes on their school fees. And it's so not fair that they'll have to pay VAT. And it's like everyone in the chat was just responding with, have you tried cutting down on your avocado toast? Iran-backed militants kill 3 in US drone attack there in Yemen. Sorry, not Yemen, Jordan. And then this sex abuse scandal that shames our NHS and the Independent. which is about the horrific scale of sexual assaults on the most vulnerable patients in mental health hospitals. And there's been 20,000 sexual incidents in special units reported in the last 5 years. That's really bloody horrific. And then 2 more teens knifed in UK, killed in UK knife epidemic is what they're going with on the metro there. So yeah, no news is good news, I guess, because that's pretty bloody horrific. What can I say? But yeah, Jesus, there's some quite traumatic stuff in there on the newspapers today. Lots of different stories, depending on the paper, which I always think is a good thing. I always think when there's a variety of things to talk about or look at. But generally speaking, like every news story you read is going to be something negative. It's never like, hey, sunshine and buttercups today for all. It's always, oh my God, this horrific thing has happened, or this horrific thing has happened to these people. And yeah, not great. Where's G says 3 out of 4 cancers are not caused by smoking. Brilliant. There was a guy in the 90s called Bill Hicks who used to do these really funny stand-up routines about, non-smokers die every day. And then he died. Anyway, what's this? Majority of cancers are caused by viral or bacterial infection. The rest caused by pollution. 1 in 4 attributed to smoking. Okay, 1 in 4. Is that of smokers or is that of the general population? Because if that's of the general population, 1 in 4 people don't smoke. It's about 1 in 5 people smoke. So that's pretty horrific. David, what was it? Penny Mordaunt said, you stand up and fight, then your neighbour stands up and fights, and the homeless man's dog stands up and fights. Yes, you will stand up and fight. It was very strange and random. It was as though the AI was malfunctioning in her head. She was hallucinating. Is that what they call it with AI when it doesn't get it right? It's hallucinating. Every day there's bad news. It's sick. Yeah, I'm thinking that we should do a show on Labour Social. What do you reckon? Labour called Good News, everyone. And it's just good news that I've dug out from somewhere. Just telling you what the good news is. There you go. Michael's saying he's got throat cancer, never smoked. I'm really sorry to hear that, mate. That's awful. Shit. I'm really sorry. Nick says EASM, single market via EFTA, is entirely possible and compatible with the 16 ref. That needs to be Labour's priority once they get into power. I absolutely agree. Graham is judging smokers, yeah. I got drunk with Bill Hicks back in the day. That's from Darian. That's pretty cool. Bill Hicks was an effing legend. So much funny than Graham, to be fair. Oh, thanks, mate. I love the way BUFU Mike is trying to be a troll, but he's not very good at it. Yeah, that person who was paid to be funny. They were funnier than you. Yeah, they were literally paid to be funny. that person who was paid to run fast could run faster than you bastard. Yeah. Man who was famous for jogging died in his 30s. That sounds like something that Bill Hicks would come out with, though. I think Penny was trying to channel Churchill's "We will fight them on the beach" speech fail miserably. Yeah, I think she was, and it was like failed hilariously miserably. But yeah, no, look, I understand the whole smoking thing because literally billions, possibly trillions of dollars have been spent over the last 50, 60, 70 years to convince people to smoke. It's really important for people to make money that way because you've got all this land that otherwise could be used for growing food, but instead we grow tobacco and, people smoke it and they're basically hooked for life because it's more addictive than heroin. I got a friend who worked with drug users in Manchester for many years, and he always says to me, it's easier to get them to quit heroin than it is to get them to quit smoking. So I'm just glad I never started in the first place. And that's I only deal in facts. That's why I'm such a cocky effing bastard. My dad smoked, drove him mad trying to give up, managed it in his pancreas, killed him 10 years later. Good job he gave up. Well, yeah. Well, I lost my grandmother to lung cancer at a young age, and it was kind of a horrible process to see your grandmother go that way. And she smoked, and yeah, it kind of put me off. When I started this smoking, the odds on surviving was 1 in 5. And Leanne said, so I've been smoking for 25 years. Someone put that fire out. Lucy Will said, I don't see the point of smoking or its benefits. Well, the benefits are, Lucy, it makes rich people, tobacco barons, even more money because they haven't got enough. So they need to. There are these things that like is it manufactured scarcity? It's this idea that like we need these certain things in our lives, and I think tobacco is the most outrageous one. But at the same time, I think that drugs should be legal, all of them. But I just don't want them. I just don't want people doing them around me. In the same way, I think smoking should be legal. I just don't want anyone doing it around me or children, which is a problem there. Are there any other marches planned in London to rejoin the EU? That's from David. David, yes. Well, there'll be one in September because I think we'll be holding one in September each year now for the foreseeable. It was the guy who invented jogging. Jim Fox died in his 30s. Congenial heart defect. That's some purity vendetta. Well, there you go. Non-smokers die every day, as Bill Hicks said before he died. Right. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Phil Morehouse will be back tomorrow with another morning brew. And until then, I might be back tonight with the swear jar if I can coax Super Tansky to come on the channel again. We'll see. But otherwise, definitely tomorrow morning. So look out for that. And in the meantime, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thanks to all the wonderful patrons and YouTube members who keep this channel afloat. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.